I never thought a birthday cake could change everything. That's the kind of thing you say in hindsight, when you're trying to make sense of the moment your entire world tilted sideways. But standing in Mrs. Chen's bakery 3 days after that rain-soaked morning, watching Maya press her small face against the glass case with the kind of longing that breaks you clean in half, I wasn't thinking about fate or destiny or any of that romance novel garbage. I was counting quarters in my coat pocket and praying the total would somehow be different than the last 5 times I'd counted. It wasn't, "Can I help you?" Mrs. Chen's voice was gentle, too gentle. The kind of gentle that meant she already knew I couldn't afford anything behind that pristine glass. My throat closed around the words. Maya's hand was so small in mine, her fingers sticky from the lollipop the bank teller had given her while I begged for an extension on overdraft fees. "Do you have anything that didn't sell? Maybe something from yesterday?" The shame tasted like copper, like blood. Mrs. Chen's eyes flickered with something. Pity, maybe, or recognition. And I wanted to dissolve into the floor. This was my daughter's 5th birthday. 5 years of scrambling and surviving, and somehow never being enough. 5 years of her father's absence echoing louder than his presence ever had. "Mommy, it's okay." Maya squeezed my hand. "We can just get regular bread. I like bread." That's when I felt it. The weight of someone's attention, heavy and deliberate, like a hand on the back of my neck. I turned. He sat in the corner booth, the one nobody ever sat in because it was too dark, too tucked away, too separate from the warmth of Mrs. Chen's usual crowd. At first, he was just a shape, all sharp angles and expensive fabric that didn't belong in our neighborhood. Then my eyes adjusted, and I saw him clearly. Dark hair, dark eyes, darker suit. The kind of man who looked like he'd been carved from something harder than stone, something that could cut you if you got too close. His hands rested on the table. No phone, no coffee, no newspaper. Just those hands, perfectly still, like he'd been waiting, like he'd been listening. Our eyes met for exactly 3 seconds, long enough for me to see something flicker behind that controlled expression. Not pity, something else. Something that made my pulse kick against my ribs in a way that had nothing to do with fear and everything to do with recognition. The kind you feel when you realize someone sees you, really sees you, in all your desperate, humiliating truth. Then he looked away, and I could breathe again. Mrs. Chen. His voice cut through the bakery's warmth like a blade through butter. Low, controlled, American, but with edges that suggested somewhere else. Something else. The 3-tier in the back. The one with the custom roses. Mrs. Chen's eyebrows shot up. "Mr. DeLuca, that's a special order. I know what it is." He stood, and the movement was liquid, effortless. He was taller than I'd thought, broader, the kind of presence that rearranged the air around him. Put the child's name on it. "Maya, isn't it?" My breath stopped. He knew her name. How did he know her name? And box up a dozen of the French macarons. The chocolate ones. He reached into his jacket. I flinched, hating myself for it, and pulled out a wallet that probably cost more than my rent. "Deliver it to their address. Mrs. Chen has it." She did. I'd been a regular here for 2 years, back when I could afford to be a regular anywhere. I started. But he was already moving toward the door. "You're not." He paused, his back to me, one hand on the doorframe. Consider it a gift from someone who remembers what it's like to have nothing. Then he was gone, dissolving into the gray morning like smoke. Maya tugged my sleeve. "Mommy, who was that man?" "I don't know, baby." But my hands were shaking, and my voice was shaking, and some instinct older than thought was screaming at me that I'd just been seen by someone dangerous, someone powerful, someone who'd decided, for reasons I couldn't begin to understand, that I mattered. Mrs. Chen brought out the cake an hour later. It was perfect. 3 tiers of vanilla and strawberry. Maya's name written in gold frosting, tiny pink roses cascading down the sides like a waterfall. Maya cried. I cried. We took it home in a box that was too beautiful to throw away. That night, after Maya fell asleep with frosting still smudged on her cheek, I found the business card tucked into the cake box. Heavy stock, cream-colored, embossed with something that looked like a crown or maybe a chess piece. No name, just a phone number and 6 words written in precise, masculine handwriting on the back. You deserved better than expired. I should have thrown it away. Should have recognized it for what it was, a door opening to a world I had no business entering. But I didn't throw it away. I put it in my wallet, right behind Maya's school photo, and told myself I'd never call it. I told myself a lot of things that night. 3 days later, I came home from my shift at the diner to find him leaning against a black Mercedes that looked like it belonged in a movie, not my neighborhood. Same dark suit, same controlled expression, but this time there was something else in his eyes, something that looked almost like regret. Grace Martinez. He said my name like he'd been practicing it. We need to talk. I don't know you. No. He pushed off the car with a fluid grace that should have been illegal. But you're about to... Your landlord, Jerry Kowalski. He's planning to evict you tomorrow. Something about unpaid utilities and lease violations that don't exist. My stomach dropped. How do you... He works for people who work for me. His voice was flat, factual. I've told him to forget the eviction. Your rent is paid through the end of the year. Your utilities are transferred to a corporate account. You'll never see another shut-off notice. The world tilted. Why? For the first time, his control slipped. Something raw flickered across his face. Grief or rage, or some terrible combination of both. Because I heard you ask for expired cake for your daughter's birthday. And I remembered what it feels like to beg for scraps. He stepped closer and I smelled his cologne, cedar and something darker, more dangerous. Because no child should have a mother who has to choose between dignity and celebration. I didn't ask for your help. No. His smile was sharp enough to draw blood. You asked for expired cake. This is what you get instead. He turned to leave. And I should have let him. Should have thanked whatever universe had sent this strange, dangerous guardian angel and shut the door on the whole impossible situation. But Maya's face flashed behind my eyes. Maya, who'd eaten that perfect cake with tears of joy running down her cheeks. Wait. The word escaped before I could stop it. What do you want from me? He looked back over his shoulder, and in the streetlight, I saw him clearly for the first time. Not just handsome, beautiful in the way sharp things are beautiful, deadly things, things you shouldn't touch but can't look away from. From now on, Grace? His voice dropped to something that felt like a promise and a threat wrapped in silk. No one touches you. Not your landlord, not your boss, not anyone who thinks they can take advantage of your desperation. That sounds like control, not kindness. It's protection. He held my gaze, and I felt it again. That terrible recognition, like looking into a mirror that showed you truths you weren't ready to see. Whether you want it or not, you're under my protection now. Because in this city, there are only two kinds of people. The ones who break, and the ones someone powerful decides not to break. And which one are you? His smile was winter itself. I'm the one who decides. Protection, I learned, was just another word for being watched. The first sign came Tuesday morning, a black SUV idling outside Maya's elementary school when I dropped her off. The driver wore a suit too expensive for a parent pickup, sunglasses too dark for the overcast sky. He didn't look at me, but I felt the weight of his presence like a hand on my shoulder. When I asked the crossing guard if she'd seen him before, she just shrugged. Probably someone's bodyguard, she said. Like that was normal in our neighborhood where most kids walk to school alone. Maya didn't notice. She was too busy chattering about the cupcakes she wanted to bring for class snack day, her backpack bouncing against her small shoulders as she ran toward the building. I watched her disappear through those double doors and felt something twist in my chest. Not quite fear, not quite gratitude. Something unnamed and uncomfortable, like wearing shoes that almost fit but pinch in places you can't quite reach. The second sign was waiting on my doorstep when I got home from my morning shift at the diner. Grocery bags, 6 of them. Whole Foods bags, the expensive reusable kind, filled with organic produce and grass-fed meat and the type of bread that came in paper wrapping instead of plastic. There was fresh salmon, real maple syrup, coffee beans that smelled like they'd been roasted that morning. I carried them inside with shaking hands and found the receipt tucked into the last bag. $347. More than I made in a week. No note, no explanation. Just food I hadn't ordered, appearing like magic. Like someone had reached into my kitchen and decided what I needed before I knew it myself. I should have called the number on that business card right then. Should have drawn the line. Established boundaries. Made it clear that I didn't want this kind of intervention in my life. Instead, I put the groceries away. Made Maya a sandwich with the fancy bread and the organic turkey. Watched her eyes light up at the taste of something better than we usually had. Hated myself a little for not sending it back. The signs kept coming. My electricity bill arrived marked, "Paid in full," with a stamp I'd never seen before. The check engine light in my ancient Honda disappeared after I found a repair receipt tucked under my windshield wiper. Full diagnostic, oil change, new brake pads, $400 I hadn't spent. My boss, Eddie, who'd been scheduling me for every terrible shift and pocketing my tips for months, suddenly got transferred to the franchise across town. The new manager, a tired-looking woman named Susan, raised my hourly rate without me asking. Every gift felt like a chain. Every improvement felt like proof that I was losing control of my own life. I lasted 5 days before I called the number. He answered on the first ring. No greeting. Just that low voice that sounded like whiskey looked, dark and smooth and dangerous. "Grace." Not a question. He'd been waiting. "You need to stop," I said, gripping the phone so hard my knuckles went white. The groceries, the car, my job. I didn't ask for any of this. "You asked for expired cake." A pause, weighted with meaning I couldn't quite parse. "I'm simply ensuring you never have to ask for less than you deserve again." That's not... I pressed my palm against my forehead, trying to organize thoughts that kept slipping away like water through fingers. "You're making decisions about my life without asking me. That's not protection, that's necessary." The word was steel. "Your landlord isn't the only person who noticed you, Grace. The moment I intervened, you became visible to people you don't want to meet, people who would use you to get to me." My stomach dropped. "What are you talking about?" Silence stretched across the line, thick and heavy. When he spoke again, his voice had changed. Lower, more careful, like he was choosing each word with surgical precision. "Meet me, tonight. There's a cafe on Westwood and 5th Neutral Ground. Come alone, and I'll explain everything. I can't just leave Maya. I've arranged for a sitter, Claudia Reyes, a teacher from Maya's school. She's already cleared her evening and agreed to stay until you return. Background checked, references verified, safe." The presumption of it struck me like a slap. He'd arranged a babysitter for my daughter, without asking. "You had no right?" I started, but he cut me off. "I had every right the moment someone started watching your apartment." His voice dropped to something that raised every hair on the back of my neck. 3rd floor, directly across the street. Red curtains, corner unit. He's been there for 2 days. Grace, photographing your schedule, noting when Maya leaves for school, documenting when you're alone. The room tilted. I moved to the window without thinking, peered through the gap in my curtains. 3rd floor, red curtains, and there, just the faintest shadow of movement, a shape pulling back from glass. 7 o'clock, he said. "Don't be late." The line went dead. I stood there for 10 minutes, phone pressed to my chest, heart hammering against my ribs like something trying to escape. Every rational instinct I had screamed at me to call the police, to pack a bag, to grab Maya and run to somewhere this dangerous, beautiful stranger couldn't follow. But I thought about that shadow in the window across the street, thought about how long it had been there, watching, documenting, waiting, thought about how I hadn't noticed, hadn't felt it, had been completely blind to the danger, and I thought about Marcus DeLuca, who had noticed, who was watching the watchers. At 6:30, Claudia knocked on my door. She was exactly what he'd promised, warm, professional, with a smile that put Maya at ease immediately. They were halfway through a puzzle when I slipped out, wearing the one nice blouse I owned and jeans that didn't have stains. The cafe was small, tucked between a vintage bookstore and a wine bar in a neighborhood I rarely visited. Too expensive, too deliberately charming, too far from my world. Marcus sat at a corner table, and even in the warm ambient lighting, he looked like something carved from shadows. Beautiful and terrible and completely out of place among the college students with their laptops and the couples sharing desserts. He stood when I approached. Old-fashioned manners wrapped around a modern threat. "You came? You didn't give me much choice." I slid into the seat across from him, keeping the table between us like it could offer protection. "Tell me what's happening. Tell me why someone is watching my apartment." He signaled the waitress, ordered 2 coffees without asking what I wanted. When she left, he leaned forward, and I caught that scent again. Cedar and something darker, smoke and expensive danger. My name is Marcus DeLuca. You may have heard of my family. Everyone in the city had. The DeLucas owned half the real estate downtown, had fingers in construction and shipping and a dozen other businesses that probably looked legitimate on paper. The newspapers called them entrepreneurs. The neighborhood called them something else. I've heard stories, I said carefully. Most of them are true. No shame in his voice, just fact. My family controls significant portions of this city's infrastructure, which means we have enemies, rivals who would love nothing more than to find a weakness, a pressure point, something they could use to damage our interests, and I'm a weakness. The words tasted bitter. You became one the moment I paid for that cake. His jaw tightened, the only crack in his controlled facade. Vincent Crane. He runs the East Side operations, everything we don't touch. Drugs, trafficking, the businesses I refuse to be part of. He's been looking for leverage against me for years. I still don't understand what that has to do with. He thinks you matter to me. Marcus's eyes locked onto mine, dark and infinitely deep. And now that he thinks it, you're in danger. The man watching your apartment works for him. Soon there will be more. They'll approach you, threaten you, maybe try to hurt Maya to force my hand. The mention of my daughter's name made everything snap into sharp focus. Then stop. Whatever protection you think you're offering, take it back. Leave us alone, and they'll have no reason to. It doesn't work that way. He reached across the table, stopped just short of touching my hand. You're already marked, Grace. The moment I interfered with your landlord, the moment people saw me take an interest, you became a symbol. If I withdraw protection now, they'll see it as weakness. They'll hurt you just to prove they can. So I'm trapped. My voice came out hollow. Damned because you decided to help me. Yes, at least he was honest. I can't undo what's already done, but I can keep you safe. Your rent is paid for the year. Use that time to save money, build a cushion, prepare for whatever comes next. Accept the security detail, let them keep watch, stay alert. And in a few months, when things settle, when Vincent loses interest or moves on to easier targets, you'll be free. A few months. I laughed, the sound sharp and humorless. You want me to live in a cage for months because you decided I deserved a birthday cake. Something flashed in his eyes. Pain, maybe, or regret so deep it had its own weight. I'm sorry. And he meant it. I could hear the truth in those 2 words. If I could take it back, if I could have walked away and let you struggle in peace, I would. But I saw you in that bakery, heard you ask for scraps for your daughter, and He stopped, jaw working like he was chewing words too difficult to swallow. I couldn't walk away. Something in me broke, and I had to help, had to fix it, even knowing it might cost you more than it gave. The confession hung between us, raw and unexpected. For the first time, I saw past the expensive suit and the controlled demeanor to something human underneath. Something wounded and trying desperately not to show it. What broke? I asked quietly. He opened his mouth to answer, but his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, and every line of his body went rigid. We need to leave. Now. He was already standing, throwing cash on the table, his hand finding the small of my back with a familiarity that should have felt wrong but somehow didn't. My car is out back. Don't argue, don't ask questions, just trust me for the next 5 minutes. Marcus. What? Vincent knows you're here. His voice was ice over steel. He sent people. We have maybe 2 minutes before they arrive. We moved through the cafe's back exit into an alley where his Mercedes waited, engine already running. He had me in the passenger seat before I could process what was happening, the door locks clicking with a finality that made my heart race. As we pulled away, I looked back and saw them, 3 men in dark jackets, moving through the cafe's front door with purpose that had nothing to do with coffee. How did you know? My voice shook. I have people watching too. He navigated the dark streets with the precision of someone who'd escaped danger before. Vincent wanted me to bring you out, wanted to see how I'd react to a direct threat. Now he knows. Knows what? Marcus's hands tightened on the steering wheel. That I'll protect you, which means you've become valuable, which means... He didn't finish the sentence, but he didn't have to. My phone buzzed in my purse. Unknown number. Against every instinct, I answered. The voice on the other end was smooth, cultured, terrifying in its politeness. Grace Martinez, how lovely to finally reach you. My name is Vincent Crane, and I think it's time we had a conversation about your new friend, Mr. DeLuca. You see, I have a message I need delivered, and you— A pause, perfectly timed for maximum impact. You were chosen as a message. Vincent's voice stayed with me long after Marcus ended the call, smooth as silk, sharp as broken glass, promising things I didn't want to understand. The drive to wherever Marcus was taking me felt endless and too short all at once. Rain started falling, turning the city lights into watercolor smears across the windshield. I watched them blur and reform, my reflection ghost pale in the glass, and tried to remember how to breathe normally. Where are we going? My voice sounded small even to my own ears. Somewhere Vincent can't reach you tonight. Marcus's jaw was tight, his eyes never leaving the road. Somewhere I can explain what you're actually dealing with. We pulled into a neighborhood I'd never been to. Warehouses mostly, the kind repurposed into expensive lofts for people who thought exposed brick and industrial chic meant authenticity. But Marcus drove past those, turning into an unmarked lot where a single building stood apart from the others. No signs, no indication of what it was, just clean lines and warm light spilling from high windows. He parked and turned to face me, and in the dim interior I saw something I hadn't before. Exhaustion. The kind that lives in your bones, that no amount of sleep can touch. Before we go in, you need to understand something. His hand rested on the gear shift between us, close enough that I could feel its heat without touching. What I'm about to show you is who I actually am. Not the man who bought your daughter a cake. Not the man who pays your rent. The man who built an empire out of other people's fear. Why would you show me that? Because Vincent won't stop until you understand what's at stake. He looked at me then, really looked, and I felt pinned by the weight of it. And because you deserve to make an informed choice about whether you want my protection or want to take your chances alone. We got out into the rain. He offered his jacket, I refused it on principle, and we walked to a side entrance where he pressed his palm against a scanner. The door opened with a hydraulic hiss, revealing a stairwell that descended into warm fluorescent light. The sounds hit me first. Children's laughter, echoing up from below, basketballs against hardwood, music, something pop and current, the kind Maya played in our apartment. I looked at Marcus, confused. After-school program, he said simply. For kids who have nowhere safe to go between 3 and 7. Hot meals, tutoring, sports, art classes, free to anyone who needs it. We descended into a space that looked like someone had crossed a community center with a fortress. The main floor was open, basketball hoops at either end, kids ranging from maybe 6 to 16 playing, studying, laughing. Adults moved among them, teachers, counselors, all wearing ID badges, all looking genuinely engaged. Maya would love this place. The thought came unbidden and unwelcome. There are 12 facilities like this across the city, Marcus said, leading me past the main floor toward a hallway. I opened the first one 8 years ago. The city doesn't fund them. I do. Why? The question escaped before I could stop it. He didn't answer immediately, just guided me to an office overlooking the main floor, glass walls giving a clear view of everything below. Inside, the space was sparse but functional. Desk, computers, filing cabinets, and one wall covered entirely in photographs. Kids smiling, graduating, holding trophies and diplomas and acceptance letters to colleges. Marcus stood at that wall, his back to me, and when he spoke, his voice carried a weight that made my chest ache. Her name was Sophie, my little sister, 8 years old. He touched one photo in the center, smaller than the others, older. A dark-haired girl with his eyes, gap-toothed smile bright enough to hurt. 15 years ago, she died on Mercy Street, caught in crossfire meant for me, for our family, for the empire my father built and expected me to inherit. The rain outside suddenly felt very loud. After she died, I had a choice. Walk away from everything, try to be someone different, somewhere far from here, or take control of the very thing that killed her. Make sure no other Sophie died because powerful men couldn't be bothered to protect anything but their own interests. He finally turned, and his eyes were dry but devastated. I chose control. I took over every operation my father ran, then expanded. Not for profit. I have more money than I'll ever spend. but for leverage, power, the ability to say who operates in this city and under what rules. You became what killed her. I became what could have saved her. The distinction mattered to him. I could see it in every line of his body. Every child in this building exists in a space I've made safe. Every drug dealer who thinks twice before setting up near a school does it because they know I'm watching. Every trafficking operation that gets shut down before it starts happens because I have enough politicians and cops on payroll to make the math work differently. I wanted to argue, wanted to point out that control built on fear wasn't protection, that empires founded on violence just taught the world more violence. But then I looked through the glass at those kids below, laughing, safe, fed, cared for, and the argument died in my throat. Vincent Crane runs the operations I won't touch, Marcus continued. Everything I've spent 15 years keeping out of this city. He wants back in, wants the territory, wants to prove that my way doesn't work. And the best way to do that? Show that you can't protect the people you care about. The words tasted like ash. Exactly. He moved closer, and I could smell rain on his clothes, cedar and smoke and something underneath that was just him, just Marcus, stripped of all the trappings. You and Maya became valuable the moment I decided you were worth saving. And I won't apologize for that choice, Grace. I'd make it again. Every single time. Before I could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, frowned, and suddenly the exhausted man before me disappeared, replaced by someone harder, colder, more dangerous. We have a problem. What kind of problem? He pulled up something on his phone, turned it toward me. Security footage. Grainy but clear enough. My apartment building, my front door, and a man I didn't recognize picking the lock with practiced ease, disappearing inside. My knees went weak. Maya. Is she? She's fine. Claudia got her out the back stairs the moment our security flagged the breach. They're in a safe house 3 blocks away. He was already moving, pulling me toward the door. But someone just broke into your home, Grace. Someone sent a very clear message. We were halfway to the stairs when alarms blared. Not here, but from his phone. Multiple alerts cascading across the screen. He stopped, face draining of color in a way that terrified me more than anything else had. What is it? Marcus looked up, and for the first time I saw something in his eyes that might have been fear. Vincent didn't send someone to your apartment to scare you. His voice was hollow. He sent them to plant evidence. Evidence that makes it look like you've been helping me run illegal operations from your home. The police are already en route. They'll find exactly what Vincent wants them to find. The world tilted sideways. You're about to be arrested, Marcus said quietly. Or you can come with me right now. Disappear into a life where Vincent can't touch you, but you can never go back to being just Grace Martinez, single mother, struggling to survive. Those are your options. That's not. There has to be another way. I didn't do anything. Innocence doesn't matter when someone with enough money decides you're guilty. He held out his hand, and I saw it shake slightly before he steadied it. I can protect you. I can keep Maya safe, but you have to trust me. Right now. This second, before those cops arrive and Vincent wins anyway. I thought of Maya's face, thought of those photographs on the wall, kids who got a chance because someone decided they were worth saving. Thought of Sophie, 8 years old, dying on a street named for Mercy. I took his hand, his fingers closed around mine, warm, steady, certain. Then we run, he said, and I'll spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret trusting me. We were moving toward a back exit when his phone lit up one more time. A photo message from an unknown number. Marcus opened it, and I saw his face go completely blank. The image showed Maya and me in Mrs. Chen's bakery that first morning, rain visible through the windows behind us. Someone had been there. Someone had been watching even then. And drawn over both our faces in digital red ink was a target, crosshairs precise and terrifying. The message beneath was simple. She sees too much now. So do we. The safe house was nothing like I expected. I'd pictured something stark and temporary. Bare walls, minimal furniture, the kind of place that screamed hiding. Instead, Marcus brought us to a brownstone in a quiet neighborhood where maple trees lined the sidewalk and porch lights glowed warm against the night. Inside, it looked like someone's actual home. Soft couches, bookshelves, a kitchen that smelled faintly of vanilla and coffee. Maya was asleep on the sofa when we arrived, curled under a blanket with Claudia reading beside her. The relief that flooded through me seeing her safe and whole nearly brought me to my knees. "Mommy?" She stirred, reaching for me with sleep-heavy arms. I gathered her close, breathing in the strawberry scent of her shampoo, feeling her heartbeat against mine. Real. Safe. Here. "We're okay, baby," I whispered, though I wasn't sure if I was reassuring her or myself. Claudia left quietly after Marcus paid her in cash. I tried not to calculate. Then it was just the three of us. Me, Maya, and the dangerous man who'd somehow become our only anchor in a world that had tilted completely sideways. Maya fell back asleep within minutes, exhausted by an adventure she didn't understand. I carried her to the bedroom Marcus indicated, tucked her in with hands that wouldn't stop shaking, and stood there watching her breathe until I could trust my legs to carry me back downstairs. Marcus was in the kitchen, making coffee with the focused precision of someone who needed the ritual more than the caffeine. He'd shed his jacket, rolled up his sleeves, and in the soft overhead light he looked younger somehow. Less like a crime boss, more like a man who'd forgotten how to rest. "How long do we have to stay here?" My voice came out harder than intended. "Until I can prove you had nothing to do with the evidence Vincent planted." He poured 2 cups without asking if I wanted any. "Could be days. Could be weeks." "Weeks." I laughed, the sound bitter and sharp. "I have a job, Marcus. Maya has school. I have a life that doesn't include hiding in safe houses because some criminal thinks I'm useful leverage." Had a life. He met my eyes over the rim of his cup. "That life ended the moment Vincent decided you mattered. I'm sorry, but pretending otherwise helps no one." The bluntness of it struck like a physical blow. I wanted to argue, to insist he was wrong, that I could still salvage some version of normal. But normal had died the moment I asked for expired cake and caught the attention of a man who built empires out of other people's fear. So what now? I wrapped both hands around the coffee mug, needing its warmth. "You just... what? Keep us locked up indefinitely, make all our decisions, turn us into permanent charity cases who exist at your mercy?" Something flashed across his face. Hurt, maybe, or recognition of a truth he didn't want to admit. "No." He set down his cup with careful control. "Now we establish rules, boundaries, some kind of structure that makes this bearable for both of us." Rules. I couldn't keep the skepticism from my voice. 3. From me. He held up fingers like he was negotiating a business contract, not my entire existence. "First, you don't hide things from me. If you're scared, if something feels wrong, if you need something, you tell me. I can't protect what I don't know about." I wanted to argue that protection shouldn't require total transparency, that privacy was a right, not a privilege. But I thought of that man breaking into my apartment, of Vincent's smooth voice on the phone, of crosshairs drawn over my daughter's face. Second, you don't take risks without my knowledge. No going out alone, no meeting people I haven't cleared, no trying to handle things yourself because you think you're being brave or independent. His jaw tightened. "Vincent is smart, Grace. He'll use your pride against you. Your need to prove you don't need help. That's how he'll hurt you." The accuracy of it stung. He'd seen through me in minutes, identified the exact weakness I'd spent years pretending was strength. And third, Marcus was quiet for a long moment, his eyes searching mine with an intensity that made my breath catch. "You don't run." His voice dropped to something raw and honest. "If this gets too hard, if you hate me, if you want out, we talk about it. We find a solution together. But you don't disappear in the night thinking you'll be safer alone. Because you won't be. And I..." He stopped, jaw working. "I need to know you're safe. Even if you hate me. Even if you never want to see me again. I need to know." The confession hung between us, weighted with something that felt dangerously close to vulnerability. For the first time, I wondered what it cost him. This protection, this control, this need to save people who reminded him of a sister he couldn't save. "One rule," I said finally. "From me." He nodded, waiting. "You don't lie to me." I held his gaze, refusing to flinch. "Not to protect me, not to make things easier, not because you think the truth will scare me away. If I'm going to trust you with my daughter's life, with mine, then I need to know who you actually are. All of it. The foundation and the empire and everything in between." For a moment I thought he might refuse, Might draw some line between the man who bought birthday cakes and the one who controlled this city's underworld. But then he extended his hand across the counter, and I saw his fingers trembling slightly before he steadied them. Deal. I took his hand. His palm was warm, calloused in unexpected places, and the contact sent electricity racing up my arm in a way that had nothing to do with fear. We stayed like that for 3 heartbeats. Connected, committed, standing on the edge of something neither of us fully understood. Then Maya called out from upstairs. Some half-awake question about whether we had the stuffed rabbit she'd left at home, and the moment shattered into practical concerns. Marcus had someone bring her favorite things within an hour. Rabbit, clothes, books, everything she might need. I wanted to resent the efficiency of it, the way he could make anything happen with a phone call. But watching Maya's face light up when she saw her belongings made gratitude war with pride, until I couldn't tell which was winning. The days that followed developed their own strange rhythm. Mornings with Maya, homeschool worksheets Marcus had arranged, cartoons on a TV bigger than anything we'd owned. Afternoons while she napped, Marcus would disappear into a home office, conducting business through encrypted calls I tried not to overhear. Evenings were the hardest, when the 3 of us would sit together like some twisted version of a family, eating takeout Marcus ordered and pretending this was somehow normal. But the nights were when the mask slipped. I'd find him sometimes, late, standing at the window overlooking the dark street. Just standing there, perfectly still, like he was waiting for something he knew would come eventually. One night I couldn't sleep and came downstairs to find him that way, and something about his silhouette against the glass made me brave. "Tell me about Sophie," I said quietly. He didn't turn, didn't acknowledge I'd spoken for so long I thought he might not answer. Then, she used to make me friendship bracelets, terrible ones, all tangled and uneven, in colors that didn't match. His voice was barely above a whisper. I wore every single one until they fell apart. Wore them to meetings with my father's associates, to negotiations, to places where showing weakness could get you killed. Didn't care. She was 8 years old and she thought I was a hero. And I... His breath hitched. I couldn't even keep her alive long enough to learn the truth. I moved closer without thinking, until I stood beside him at the window. What truth? That I was never the hero. Just another monster trying to control the nightmare. He finally looked at me, and his eyes were devastated. Every child I save, every program I fund, every operation I shut down, it's all just math. Trying to balance the equation, trying to make Sophie's death mean something. And does it? I asked. Does it balance? No. The word was flat, final. It never will. But I keep trying anyway, because the alternative is accepting that she died for nothing, and He stopped, jaw clenching. I can't accept that, so I keep building, keep protecting, keep trying to make the numbers work even though I know they never will. Without thinking, I reached out and touched his hand where it rested on the windowsill. Just my fingers over his, the barest connection. He went completely still, like he'd forgotten what simple comfort felt like. "You saved Maya and me," I said quietly. "That has to count for something. Or I just added 2 more people to the list of those I'll eventually fail." The bleakness of it cracked something open in my chest. Here was the truth he'd promised, not just the empire, but the cost. The weight of responsibility that had long since turned from burden into identity, until he couldn't separate who he was from what he'd failed to do. Marcus. I waited until he looked at me. "If you fail us, it won't be because you didn't try. It'll be because Vincent is smarter or faster or just luckier. But trying counts. Trying is the only thing that separates monsters from men who've made terrible choices." Something shifted in his expression, not quite hope, but maybe the memory of what hope used to feel like. Then his phone buzzed, shattering the moment. He glanced at it, and every line of his body went rigid. "What?" My voice sounded small, even to my own ears. He turned the phone toward me. A photo. Grainy security footage showing a small pink shoe, child-sized, sitting on the steps of the brownstone we were currently hiding in. Just sitting there, perfectly placed, impossible to miss. The message beneath was simple. This belonged to the last one he tried to save. Her name was Sophie DeLuca. Ask him how she died. The shoe sat on Marcus's desk like an accusation. Small, pink. Worn at the toe where a child had dragged her feet or kicked at things the way children do. It shouldn't have been terrifying, just a piece of leather and rubber, faded from use and time. But the way Marcus stared at it, you'd think it was a loaded gun pointed directly at his chest. "Sophie's," he said finally, his voice scraped raw. "I kept one. After the funeral, her favorite sneakers, she'd drawn stars on them with silver marker. This is it." My stomach dropped. "Vincent has access to your personal things?" "Had." His jaw clenched so tight I heard his teeth grind. "This was in a safety deposit box at a bank only 3 people knew about, which means he has someone inside my operation. Someone close enough to know where I keep the things I can't bear to look at but can't throw away." The implications settled over us like falling ash. If Vincent could reach into Marcus's most private spaces, could steal his sister's shoe from a vault meant to be impenetrable, then nowhere was safe. Not this house, not the foundation, not anywhere Marcus thought he'd built walls high enough to keep the past contained. Maya was still asleep upstairs. The thought of her, innocent, trusting, sleeping peacefully while danger circled closer, made something fierce and feral rise in my chest. "Tell me about Mercy Street," I said. "All of it. Vincent is using your past against you, which means I need to understand what actually happened." Marcus looked at me for a long moment, and I saw him weighing it. How much truth to share, how much to bury. But we'd made a deal. No lies. Not even the ones meant to protect. He sat down heavily, like his legs had forgotten how to hold him. 15 years ago, my father ran everything Vincent runs now. Drugs, protection rackets, loan sharking, all the operations I've spent my adult life keeping out of this city. His fingers traced the edge of Sophie's shoe with a gentleness that broke my heart. I was 19, stupid, convinced I could be different, better. I'd started college, was planning to walk away from the family business entirely. What changed? Sophie. The name came out like a prayer. She was 8, smart, funny, always asking questions I didn't know how to answer. She'd gotten into my father's files one day, found photographs of people he'd hurt. She didn't understand what she was seeing, but she knew it was wrong. And she told me Dad was a bad man, that someone needed to stop him. Rain started again outside. Soft percussion against the windows. I should have lied to her. Should have made up some story that would have kept her innocent a little longer. But I told her the truth. That yes, Dad hurt people, but that I was going to change things. That when I was old enough, strong enough, I'd take over and make it all different. Better. His voice cracked. She believed me. 8 years old. And she believed her big brother could save the world. I waited, letting him find the words in his own time. My father found out about our conversation. Found out I'd been talking to federal prosecutors, trying to cut a deal that would dismantle his empire from the inside. He didn't confront me directly. That wasn't his style. Instead, he sent a message through the people he did business with. Told them his son was a traitor. Told them family loyalty meant nothing if it threatened profit. Marcus's hands were shaking now. The shoe cradled between them like something holy. The Italians who ran the East Side back then decided to make an example. Sent 3 men to our house on a Tuesday afternoon. Sophie was walking home from school. I was supposed to pick her up. But I'd been meeting with prosecutors, working on my grand plan to be a hero. She took Mercy Street because it was shorter, because she knew that path by heart. His breath hitched, and I watched 15 years of grief play across his face in the space of a heartbeat. I got there in time to hear the shots. Not in time to stop them. Not in time to do anything but watch her fall. Tears tracked down his cheeks, silent and devastating. She looked at me, even bleeding, even dying. She looked at me like I could still fix it. Like her big brother who'd promised to save the world could save her. "Marcus," I started, but he shook his head. I held her while she died. Promised her I'd make it right. Promised her the men who did this would pay. That no other kid would die on a street named for Mercy while I still had breath in my body. She tried to tell me something at the end. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. I never knew what she wanted to say. The weight of it filled the room, thick and suffocating. I thought about Maya upstairs, about how quickly innocence could shatter, how easily love could turn into the sharpest kind of loss. "What did you do?" I asked quietly. "Everything." The word was steel wrapped in silk. I went to my father's enemies, made deals, offered information, turned state's evidence against him and every operation he'd built. Watched him go to prison for life, knowing he'd die there alone and unmourned. Then I took over everything he'd left behind, not to run it the same way, but to control it. Shape it. Make it into something that could actually protect instead of destroy. And Vincent was one of my father's lieutenants, young, ambitious, convinced the old ways were better. When I restructured everything, cut out the drugs, the trafficking, anything that preyed on the vulnerable, he lost his income stream. I gave him a choice, adapt or leave. He chose to leave, took what followers he could, and spent 15 years building his own empire on the east side. Everything I won't touch, he embraces. Every operation I shut down, he tries to resurrect. The picture was finally clear. This wasn't just business rivalry or territorial dispute. This was ideological warfare, two men fighting over the soul of a city, using everything and everyone as weapons. He wants to prove your way doesn't work, I said. That control built on mercy is just weakness waiting to be exploited. Yes, Marcus met my eyes, and I saw the exhaustion there. The years of trying to balance an equation that refused to balance. And the best way to prove it is to hurt someone I'm trying to protect. Someone vulnerable. Someone who reminds me of Sophie. The words hung between us, heavy with implication. Maya. He meant Maya. Vincent didn't choose us randomly, I said slowly, pieces clicking into place. He picked a single mother with a young daughter. He picked someone who'd trigger every protective instinct you have. We're not collateral damage. We're the weapon. I'm sorry. The apology was raw, genuine, devastating. I saw you in that bakery and I had to help. Had to try to save someone for once. I wasn't thinking strategically, wasn't considering consequences. I just saw a mother begging for expired cake for her daughter's birthday, and it broke something in me that's been broken for 15 years. I should have been angry. Should have raged at him for making us targets, for dragging us into a war we never asked to fight. But looking at him, at this man who'd built an empire out of grief, who'd spent half his life trying to atone for a death he couldn't prevent, I felt something else entirely. Understanding. Terrible, unwanted understanding. I left the door open. I said quietly. What? The night my ex-husband left for good? He'd been drinking, getting aggressive. I told him to leave, and he did. But I left the door unlocked behind him because some stupid part of me thought he might come back. Might sober up and remember he had a daughter who loved him. Might be the man I'd convinced myself he could become. Marcus watched me, waiting. Someone broke in that night, took my laptop, my phone, the emergency cash I'd hidden in the freezer. I reported it. But the police said it was my fault for leaving the door unlocked. My fault for being careless. I wrapped my arms around myself, remembering. For years, I blamed myself. Thought I'd deserved it somehow. Deserved to have that one moment of hope punished with violation and loss. Grace? But it wasn't my fault, I continued, the words coming faster now, released from wherever I'd kept them locked. It was the fault of whoever walked through that unlocked door and decided to take what wasn't theirs. Just like Sophie's death wasn't your fault, it was the fault of the men who pulled the triggers, the ones who decided a child's life was acceptable collateral in their war. Something shifted in Marcus's expression. Not quite absolution, but maybe the beginning of understanding that absolution might be possible. We can't change the past, I said. Can't unlock doors we already opened or save children who are already gone. But we can protect the ones who are still here, still breathing, still counting on us to be better than our worst moments. Marcus stood slowly, still holding Sophie's shoe, and moved to where I stood. Close enough that I could feel his warmth, smell the cedar and smoke that clung to his clothes, see the silver threaded through his dark hair at the temples. You're trying to save me, he said softly. From guilt that's older than your daughter. I'm trying to save both of us, I corrected. From believing we deserve the punishment Vincent wants to deliver. From letting our past mistakes define our future choices. He reached out slowly, giving me time to pull away, and touched my face with fingertips that trembled. The gesture was achingly gentle, reverent, like I was something precious he was afraid of breaking. I don't know how to be saved, Grace. Only how to save others. Then let me teach you. The words surprised us both. Let me show you what it looks like to accept help instead of always being the one who gives it. For a moment, I thought he might kiss me. Saw the want flicker in his eyes, the way his gaze dropped to my mouth and lingered. But he didn't. Instead, he rested his forehead against mine, breathing like he'd just run a marathon, and we stood there in the space between what was and what could be. His phone shattered the moment. Harsh, insistent buzzing that made us both jump apart. Marcus looked at the screen, and his face went completely blank in that way that meant something terrible had just happened. What? My voice came out steadier than I felt. He turned the phone toward me, a video message, cued and waiting. Against every instinct, he pressed play. The footage was grainy, filmed from a car window, Maya's school, the playground where she'd played just days ago. And there, clear as anything, was Maya herself. Or rather, a girl who looked heartbreakingly like her. Same dark hair, same pink backpack, same small frame. But it wasn't Maya. Couldn't be Maya, because Maya was upstairs sleeping. The girl turned, and I saw her face clearly. Someone else's daughter, someone else's precious child. And standing beside her, talking to her with a smile that made my skin crawl, was a man in a dark jacket. The video cut to black. Text appeared. Wrong little girl. Marcus. But she'll do until we find the right one. TikTok. How many children will you let me hurt before you give me what I want? Marcus's hands were shaking so badly he nearly dropped the phone. He's escalating, he said, voice hollow. Threatening random children now, using them to force my hand. What does he want? But even as I asked, I knew it in my bones, in the sick certainty that had been building since Vincent first said my name. Marcus confirmed it anyway. He wants me to choose. Give him you and Maya. Let him prove I can't protect the people I care about, or watch him hurt innocent children until I do. Either way, he wins. Either way, I lose. The room felt too small suddenly, the walls closing in. I thought about that little girl in the video, someone's daughter, targeted simply because she looked like Maya. Thought about all the other children who might become pawns in this sick game. There has to be another way, I whispered. There isn't. Marcus looked at me with eyes that had seen too much, lost too much. Vincent has spent 15 years planning this. Every move calculated, every contingency prepared. He knows exactly how to hurt me, and he'll keep hurting people until what? Until you break, until you hand us over and prove him right. Anger flared hot and bright in my chest. No, I didn't survive 5 years alone with a child, didn't claw my way through poverty and shame and fear, just to become a victim in someone else's tragedy. Grace, I want to fight back. The words came from somewhere primal, somewhere I'd kept carefully locked because mothers don't get to be reckless, don't get to risk everything on rage and principle. Tell me how. Tell me what we can do that Vincent won't expect. Marcus stared at me like he'd never really seen me before. Then, slowly, something shifted in his expression, grief giving way to something harder, sharper, more dangerous. If we fight back, if we go after Vincent directly, there's no going back to the life you had, no returning to normal. You become part of this world permanently. Normal died the day I asked for expired cake. I held his gaze, refusing to flinch. So tell me, how do we hurt him back? For the first time since Sophie's shoe arrived, Marcus smiled. It wasn't a happy expression. It was the smile of a man who'd finally decided to stop playing defense. We give him exactly what he thinks he wants, he said quietly. And then we burn his entire empire to the ground. The plan was simple in theory, devastating in practice. Marcus would make Vincent believe he'd broken, that the threat to innocent children had worked, that he was ready to negotiate surrender. A meeting at the Avalon Hotel, public enough for safety, private enough for gloating. While Vincent celebrated, federal agents Marcus had been feeding evidence for months would move in, dismantling everything Vincent had built. Financial accounts frozen, political connections exposed, every lieutenant arrested simultaneously. Marcus explained, his voice clinical despite the fire in his eyes. By the time he realizes what's happening, his empire will be ash. I watched him work, pulling up surveillance footage, blueprints, schedules. and saw both the strategist who'd built an empire and the exhausted man beneath it. The duality was mesmerizing and terrifying in equal measure. Maya appeared in the doorway then, rubbing sleep from her eyes, clutching her stuffed rabbit. She looked so small, so achingly vulnerable, and I saw Marcus's expression crack before he rebuilt the mask. "Mommy? Are we still on vacation?" The innocence in her voice broke something in me. "Yes, baby. A little while longer. I miss home." She leaned into me, warm and solid and real. "I miss my room and the park where the ducks live." Every word was a knife. I'd taken her from everything familiar because a stranger had decided we were worth saving. Now that same stranger was planning a war that would either free us or destroy us. After settling Maya with breakfast and cartoons, I returned to find Marcus different. Sharper, colder, grief buried beneath strategic calculation. This was the man who'd survived his father's empire, who'd turned loss into leverage. "Tomorrow night," he said. "Vincent has agreed to meet. I'll give him the performance he expects. Broken, desperate, willing to deal. While he's distracted, everything falls apart around him. You've been planning this for months. Years." He met my eyes, documenting every operation, every dirty transaction. I was waiting for the right moment, the right leverage. And we're that leverage. You're the catalyst. The distinction mattered to him. Vincent showed his hand when he targeted you. Proved he'd hurt innocents to reach me. That crosses lines even his allies won't accept. When the evidence comes out, tied to threats against a single mother and child, the people protecting him will scatter. It was brilliant and terrible, using our vulnerability as the weapon. I should have felt relieved. Instead, I felt sick. What if it doesn't work? The question came out smaller than intended. What if he's smarter than you think? Marcus was quiet for a long moment, his gaze distant. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of someone who'd already accepted every possible consequence. Then I stopped trying to be better than my father and become exactly what Vincent understands. Monster versus monster. The confession terrified me because I understood it. Understood that moment when love transforms into something sharper, when protection becomes permission for anything necessary. "That's what Vincent wants," I said quietly. "To prove you're no different than him." Maybe he's right. His smile was bitter. Maybe I'm just better at lying to myself about what I really am. "No." I gripped his arm hard enough to bruise. "The difference is you asked what I wanted instead of taking it. The difference is Sophie's shoe made you cry instead of plan revenge. The difference is you're questioning yourself instead of just pulling triggers. Introspection doesn't save lives, Grace. Maybe not. But it's what makes us human." I held his gaze, refusing to let him retreat into cold calculation. "You can win tomorrow without becoming your father. You can take Vincent down without losing yourself. And if I can't, if the only way to keep you safe is to cross every line I've refused to cross?" The question hung between us, terrible in its honesty. "Then I'll remind you who you are after," I said. "I'll be the mirror that shows you the man who bought cake for a stranger's daughter, who cried over his sister's shoe. I'll reflect the good back until you can see it yourself again." Something shifted in his expression. Walls crumbling, masks falling, the exhausted man underneath finally visible. "Why?" The word came out broken. "Why would you do that for me?" Because somewhere between terror and trust, I'd started to care. Because watching him fight to be better made me want to fight harder too. Because Maya deserved to see what it looked like when broken people tried to heal instead of breaking others. I stepped closer and took his face in my hands, making him look at me. Really look. Because you're worth saving, Marcus DeLuca, even if you don't believe it yet. For a heartbeat, we stood suspended in possibility. His eyes searched mine, and I saw hope warring with disbelief, want tangled with fear of wanting. The space between us felt charged with everything unsaid, everything we'd been carefully not acknowledging since that first day in the bakery. Then his phone shattered the moment with harsh buzzing. Marcus checked the screen, and every line of his body went rigid. The transformation was instantaneous, from vulnerable man to something harder, colder, deadlier. What? But I already knew from the way his hands started shaking, from the absolute stillness that came over him. He turned the phone toward me. Police press conference footage, streaming live, the chief at a podium, looking grim, and the headline, Evidence links DeLuca organization to child trafficking ring. Warrant issued. Vincent hadn't waited for tomorrow's meeting. He'd rewritten the narrative entirely, turned Marcus from protector into predator, used the very system Marcus had tried to work within as the weapon that would destroy him. "I'm the only one who can clear your name now," I heard myself say, the realization settling like ice in my veins. "I'm the witness who can prove Vincent planted everything. The timeline, the threats, all of it." Marcus looked at me with something like horror. "If you testify, you'll be exposed. Every enemy I have will know your face, your name, where to find you. Vincent will make sure you pay for it. Then we'd better make sure Vincent can't make anyone pay for anything ever again." I didn't want to be saved anymore. I wanted to fight. The realization came watching Marcus's face on every news channel, labeled predator, monster, everything he'd spent 15 years proving he wasn't. Vincent had rewritten the narrative completely, turning the man who'd bought my daughter a birthday cake into the villain of someone else's story. Marcus disappeared into his office, his controlled voice issuing orders through the door. But I'd seen his hands shake when that headline appeared, seen devastation flash across his face before strategy buried it. The evidence Vincent planted wasn't random. It was a masterpiece of destruction. Financial transactions connecting Marcus to trafficking operations, shell companies that looked legitimate until examined closely, and my name at the center of it all. Making it appear Marcus had used my desperation as cover for the very crimes he'd built his empire to prevent. The irony was suffocating. Grace. Marcus emerged looking older, hollowed out. "There's a detective, Sarah Chen. She's been investigating Vincent for years, but he has too many people protecting him." I stopped pacing, arms crossed against the trembling. What does she need? A witness willing to testify. Someone Vincent actively threatened. Someone whose story proves this is retaliation, not legitimate prosecution. His voice stayed steady, but his eyes were devastated. "You're the only one who can corroborate months of evidence. Give Chen probable cause for warrants, raids, everything. But I'll be exposed." Understanding settled like ice. My face everywhere. Vincent's people will know exactly where to find me. Yes, at least he was honest. Even from prison, Vincent has reach. You'd be a target. Possibly forever. The weight of it pressed down. Testify and destroy Vincent, but live always looking over my shoulder. Or stay silent and watch Marcus fall for crimes he didn't commit. What happens to Maya? Witness protection if you want. New identities, new city. His voice cracked. Or you stay with me. Safe houses, security, always careful. But together. If you want that. The last part was barely audible, weighted with everything unspoken between us. The connection growing despite circumstances, the way his presence had transformed from cage into anchor. "There's a third option," I said quietly. Marcus waited, those dark eyes watching. "I testify publicly, but I tell the whole story, asking for expired cake. You helping a stranger, Vincent targeting us because you showed compassion." The idea crystallized from rage into power. I make this about what it actually is. A man destroying someone for being better than their circumstances. Something shifted in his expression. Surprise becoming understanding, then something dangerously close to pride. "You'd be deliberately painting a target on yourself. The target's already there." My voice was steadier than I felt. "At least this way, I control the narrative. I'm not just the victim in someone else's war. I'm the witness who chose to speak." Marcus studied me, and I watched him calculate risks and rewards, all the survival mathematics that had kept him alive this long. Then he smiled, genuine, warm, achingly human. "You're terrifying," he said softly. "I had a good teacher." I held his gaze. "So what do? We call Detective Chen. Tomorrow morning, you give your statement. I provide corroborating evidence." He caught my hand, his fingers trembling slightly. "Tonight, we prepare for every outcome, including the worst ones." His hand was warm, calloused, real. I squeezed once, promise and question together. "I'm not running, Marcus. Whatever happens, we face it together." Together. He tested the word like learning a new language. I haven't had together since Sophie died. Then remember what it feels like. We stood in fading light, hands clasped, the space between us charged with everything unspoken. Not protector and protected anymore, partners in a war neither chose but both refused to surrender. His phone shattered the moment. Marcus checked it, face draining of color, then turned the screen toward me. Unknown number. An address near the docks. Time? Tonight? 10 p.m. Below it? Come alone? Grace? Or I start sending pieces of that little girl from the playground video? You have 2 hours to decide if Marcus's life is worth hers. My blood turned to ice. That child, someone's daughter, targeted because she resembled Maya? No. Marcus's voice was steel. This is exactly what Vincent wants. To separate us, make you vulnerable. A child will die if I don't go. The words felt hollow. You saw the video. He has her. It could be a bluff, could be real. I met his eyes. And if she dies because I chose safety, how do we live with that? The question hung between us, terrible in its simplicity. Vincent's genius, forcing me to choose between the man trying to save me and an innocent child. Either way, someone suffered, unless I changed the game entirely. Then we don't play by his rules, I said. I wear a wire. Get Vincent to confess. Detective Chen moves in with federal agents. Marcus's face showed understanding and horror equally. That only works if Vincent doesn't kill you first. Then you'd better make sure he doesn't get the chance. The wire felt cold against my skin. Detective Chen's instructions echoed. Stay calm. Keep him talking. Get the confession. Marcus stood apart, jaw clenched. When Chen left, he finally looked at me. I can't lose you, he said, voice raw. Not after finally understanding what together means. I touched his face. I'm not Sophie. I'm a woman choosing to fight back. Come back to me, he whispered. Come back to us. The docks were exactly as dark as promised. Vincent stood beneath a single light, expensive suit against industrial decay. Grace Martinez. How brave. Where's the girl? Safe. For now. He circled slowly. You understand what tonight proves. That Marcus's protection means nothing. That mercy is weakness. By threatening children? By demonstrating that everyone he touches eventually breaks. Vincent stopped before me. Was the birthday cake worth watching him fall? I thought of Maya's joy, Marcus's tears. Children who had somewhere safe because one man refused to accept cruelty as inevitable. Yes, I said clearly, knowing Chen recorded everything. Because he's everything you're not, and that terrifies you. Vincent's smile turned deadly. Then lights blazed. Federal agents swarmed. Marcus appeared from shadows, moving toward me with relief and fury and love. It's over, he said as Vincent was dragged away. You did it, but I knew better. Endings were just different beginnings. 6 months later, Maya blew out candles while Marcus wore a plastic tiara. The foundation had expanded. Vincent's empire had crumbled. We'd found something surprisingly like peace. Not happily ever after. Just happily enough, hard-won and honestly earned. Marcus caught my eye, his smile holding everything, grief and hope, past and future, who he'd been and who he was becoming. I'd asked for expired cake and found something infinitely more valuable. A man learning to accept help instead of only giving it. A daughter who understood that strength sometimes meant asking for support, and my own voice, clear, certain, unafraid. We'd survived. We'd transformed. We'd chosen each other until choice became promise became truth. That was enough. That was everything. If you made it to the end of this story, let us know in the comments which city you're watching from, and click the yellow bell to subscribe to the channel and support us. Keep the adventure going by clicking on the suggested video on your screen.